Mr. Donovan, Mr. Mahar, Reverend Fathers, members of the administration, faculty, and staff, honored guests, families and friends of the graduates. Dr. Peter Quelch, class of '61, attended Loyola High School and Loyola College. After completing his bachelor's degree, he enrolled at the McGill Medical School, where he earned his medical degree. In 1972, he joined the staff at Richmond General Hospital in Richmond, BC, and has been associated with that hospital ever since. At one point, from 1992 until 2004, he was the hospital's director of palliative care. From 2007 to 2015, he was a medical consultant at the Rotary Salvation Army Hospice in Richmond. Dr. Quelch is also a clinical instructor in the Department of Family Practice at the University of British Columbia. Among his varied interests are writing. He's a member of the Lulu Writers Guild, running marathons. He has a personal best of 3 hours and 12 minutes. Studying the history of medicine, spending time with his grandchildren, trying to win the hockey pool, and finally, trying to beat Mr. Bob Shaughnessy, also class of '61, at golf. Dr. Quelch is a model of what we, as Loyola graduates, should strive to be. He is a competent individual, a man of conscience, a caring and compassionate person, whose life, well lived in the service of others, has made and continues to make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Dr. Peter Quelch.
Thank you, Stefano, for that lovely introduction. I'm still working on my personal best for the marathon. Reverend Fathers, Mr. Paul Donovan, President, faculty and staff, friends and families of the graduates and graduates of the class of 2016. Bonjour à vous tous. I'm delighted to be back in Montreal, my hometown, and especially to be here with you today sharing in this special event, your graduation. Congratulations, well done, graduates. I wish to thank my good friend and classmate, Mr. Robert Shaughnessy, for suggesting me, and also Mr. Paul Donovan, your president, for inviting me to address you today. It is indeed an honor. When I was in high school, quite a few decades ago, I read a book by a young American physician about his life and work in Laos and in the ethnic minority villages of central highlands of Vietnam. That physician was Dr. Tom Dooley, and he worked under very harsh conditions. Vietnam in the 1950s was in a state of great turmoil. They had just won the Indochina War against France, expelling the French after 100 years of occupation, and the American War was about to begin. Dr. Dooley did not speak the languages, often ran out of medical supplies, and had many other great challenges. But what really came through in his book was his passion for the practice of medicine and his concern for and love of the people that he served. That book inspired me, and so in high school I decided to become a doctor. After graduating from McGill and finishing my training in London, Ontario, my wife Janet and I and our 10-month-old daughter drove across Canada and settled in Richmond, British Columbia. I opened my office practice and joined the staff of the Richmond Hospital, which at that time was quite new, and run mainly by an energetic group of young general practitioners with good specialist support. I loved all aspects of medicine, and so I was busy doing orthopedics, delivering babies, working in the emergency room, and helping build up our department of psychiatry. I had my first opportunity to work in an underserviced country of the world in 1974 when I spent time working in Dominica, a small Caribbean island in the southern Caribbean. In 1980, at the invitation of some sisters from the Congregation of Notre Dame here in Montreal, I went to work in Guatemala in a small village called San Miguel Acatan. I arrived in Guatemala in May 1980, just 1 month after Archbishop Oscar Romero was assassinated while saying Mass in neighboring El Salvador. At that time, that area of Central America was in great turmoil, with guerrilla rebels warring with military governments and death squads. The people in the villages were afraid of both sides during this war, and it was not unheard of that their young men would disappear, never to be seen again. In San Miguel Acatan, I had the privilege to work with a wonderful young nurse by the name of Isabel Martinez, who normally ran the clinic completely on her own, serving a population of several thousand people. About 6 months after I returned from Guatemala, I had a letter from Isabel from Chiapas, Mexico. She and her family had had to flee in the middle of the night into Mexico after there had been a massacre in her village in which 60 of the young men were murdered. We got a group of people together in Richmond and helped to support the Martinez family in Mexico, and in 1985 sponsored them as refugees to come to British Columbia. Years later, after Isabel received her Canadian citizenship, she would confide to me that what she appreciated most about being a Canadian citizen was not the abundance of goods in the marketplace, nor the healthcare system or the education system, although she appreciated those. No, it was the security. It was knowing that she could go to bed at night and that her house would not be ambushed and her children disappear. In the fall of 1986, I came to Montreal to visit family, and while here, looked for a medical conference to attend. The only conference in town was the 6th International Conference for the Care of the Terminally Ill, put on by Dr. Balfour Mount and his palliative group at McGill University. At that time, I didn't know much about palliative care, so I signed up for the meeting, but with low expectations, thinking this might be a somewhat depressing meeting. To my astonishment, it was the most life-affirming and the best medical conference that I'd ever been to. There were people there from all over the world, over 1,000, and their enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm I felt at that meeting was contagious. And so when I returned to Richmond, I decided to learn everything I could about palliative care and to bring palliative care services to our hospital. And so in the late 80s, my career changed with more emphasis on palliative care as I continued also my office practice. And during my time in palliative care, I've had the privilege to be with and to listen to many dying patients as they look back on their lives, searching for meaning and purpose. And frequently, they mention that what was most important was that their lives mattered, that they made a difference. I never heard anyone look back and say, I wish I'd made more money. Sometimes they regret that due to the busyness in their lives, they were not able to take enough time for their families and their communities. For in the end and at the end, what matters most is family and community. Last year, my oldest grandson, Ethan, made his confirmation and asked me to be his sponsor. Together we searched for the various saints as he tried to choose his saint's name. I suggested that he Google Maximilian Kolbe. Maximilian Kolbe was a Polish priest, a Franciscan, who was arrested by the Nazis in 1941 and interned in Auschwitz. In 2005, while I was visiting Poland, I took the tour of Auschwitz prison camp, and our tour guide told us the story of Maximilian Kolbe. It was the practice in the prison camp that if a prisoner escaped, they would bring all the prisoners from that cell block out into the yard and randomly choose 10 people to be executed. On one such occasion, a prisoner that was chosen for executed pleaded with the guards, saying that his wife and his children needed him in the camps, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Maximilian Kolbe came out of the crowd, stepped forward, and volunteered to take his place. Father Kolbe was executed 2 weeks later. At his canonization ceremony in 1982, that very prisoner who was spared was in attendance at the canonization of Saint Maximilian Kolbe. I believe that our purpose in life is to be a saint. Now, if you're a young hockey player, you have your heroes. If you're a goalie, perhaps it's Carey Price, and you copy his moves and his technique. Or if you're a defenseman, perhaps it's PK, and you wear number 76 on your jersey, and you copy his style. And if you're really keen, you even try to dress like him off the ice. And so, if your goal is to be a saint, that is to say, a good person, you need heroes to look up to inspire you, and to learn from. It could be Francis or Ignatius or Marguerite Bourgeois or Brother Andre. And when I use the term saint, I use it in the broadest meaning, not just limited to those officially canonized. So it could be the Dalai Lama or Martin Luther King or Terry Fox, or closer to home, Jean Vanier, founder of L'Arche, or Daniel Berrigan, Jesuit priest who died last month at age 94 and who in the 60s and 70s raged against the Vietnam War and nuclear proliferation, frequently being imprisoned for civil disobedience, and about whom it was said he lived the gospel as if it were true. Now, it's true, not unlikely that any of you will have a situation as dramatic as did Maximilian Kolbe to step up for others. But if you see another being bullied in school or on the internet, do you object? Not only object, but object with the force of a Daniel Berrigan. If your friend or acquaintance is intoxicated and heading to his car with his car keys, do you try to intervene, knowing that motor vehicle accidents with alcohol involved are the commonest cause of death in young people in Canada? When you pass a homeless person, do you turn away, or do you acknowledge that person with a word or a coffee? Or at least wonder, how is it in this great country of Canada there are so many people living on the street? In 2007, I, with about 22 other British Columbians, went as a medical team to Vietnam to work in the ethnic minority villages in the highlands of central and northern Vietnam. We probably worked in some of the same villages as did Dr. Dooley back in the 50s. And some of the diseases we saw, especially infectious diseases, which are related to lack of clean water and sewage systems, were most likely similar or the same. Vietnam is a beautiful country, geographically diverse, economically on the move, friendly people, young, half the population's under 35, and with a vibrant Catholic community. Vietnamese is the only language in Southeast Asia that uses the Roman alphabet, introduced in the 17th century by a Jesuit priest. As you may know, I'm here this week also to attend the 55th year reunion of Loyola class of 1961. And so later this week, I will get together with my fellow classmates and we will exchange our stories. I know I have a lot to be thankful for. My wife, Janet, we have 3 daughters and 6 rambunctious grandchildren. And as I was preparing this talk, I reflected that I'm still grateful to my parents. When I was in grade 7 at St. Ignatius School, not far from here, I desperately wanted to go to Loyola High School. Our family, while not poor, did not have money for extras, and I can remember overhearing my parents debating whether they could afford the tuition to send me to Loyola. And in the end, they made the sacrifice and sent me and my brother to this great high school. And for that, I'm eternally grateful, because most of the things, if not most of the things, and many of the things I learned at Loyola High School. And now, my dear graduates, it is your turn to continue to create your stories. We live in a world with tremendous challenges, but also great opportunities. The world needs you to make a difference. And so I encourage you, as you go from here, live a life that matters. Don't be afraid to take risks. Fall on your knees and be ready for big surprises. Thank you, and God bless.
Alexander Apostolatos will now thank our graduation speaker.
Dr. Quelch, on behalf of the graduating class of 2016, thank you for sharing your inspiring life's journey with us this afternoon. En effet, nous sommes ravis et privilégiés de vous avoir parmi nous cet après-midi. The man who sparked your vocation in medicine, Dr. Thomas Dooley, once said, to dedicate some of our lives to others and to never, ever quit in the process. We can only hope that our Loyola education, whether in Montreal, Belize, or Dominican, will motivate us to emulate your example and better the conditions for the poor and the vulnerable around the world. In fact, Dr. Quelch, your passion and love of humanity shows us that CSP goes beyond completing our hours and writing reflections. The truth is that each of us is unique. Each of us will forge our own path, write his own story, face his own challenges, and exploit his own opportunities. But while there are many paths that lead to Rome, so to speak, Mr. Sean Donovan showed us, or helped us realize, that we have a responsibility to carry out our vision of a just and charitable society. So today, although we can celebrate passing most of our classes, and I'm specifically thinking about math, where we spent 45 minutes proving the unprovable. But I digress. And although we can celebrate conquering Loyola's discipline system, for that matter, your remarks, Doctor, invite us to ask the following question. Who are the real MVPs in our lives? And I'm sure everyone on this stage would agree with you and say that just like you, it is our parents, friends, families, countless mentors and educators who over the past 5 years have been the saints of our Loyola story. Lastly, Dr. Quelch, I find it remarkable how even 55 years later, you still share a sense of camaraderie with your fellow Loyola grads. And truth be told, I sincerely wish the same for my 133 friends sitting beside me. Chers amis de cette classe finissante extraordinaire, I am humbled and grateful to share the ending of 5 formative years with you. And finally, thank you, Dr. Quelch, for your kind and wise words, and God bless you all. Thank you.